Welcome to the 2024 Iowa City Book Festival, presented by the Iowa City UNESCO City of Literature. We would like to thank the sponsors and partners that made this event possible: the City of Iowa City, the University of Iowa, the Iowa City Public Library, Prairie Lights, Iowa Public Radio, the Graduate Hotel, and Think Iowa City. Support is provided by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Iowa Arts Council, which exists within the Iowa Economic Development Authority. The vast majority of book festival events are offered without charge, but they are not free. Please consider donating to the City of Literature by visiting iowicitybookfestival.org and click on support. Today, we are at the panel discussion, A Sense of Place Part 2. In this panel, writers will discuss place and setting as key in many kinds of writing. They will explore the following questions. How do you convey a sense of place or paint a unique landscape? In what ways does location contribute to your writing? Can a literary work truly be universal, or will place always determine how a piece is understood? Now, please welcome our moderator, Natasha Durovincheva.
All right.
I was close.
Hello, Natasha. Thank you very much. I will have nothing to say except I would like to introduce our presenters. We will start with Jared K. Anderson, who has 3 best-selling collections of nature poetry: Field Guide to the Haunted Forest, Love Notes from the Hollow Tree, and Leaf Litter. His new memoir, Something in the Woods Loves You, I think right there in front of you. Yeah, maybe you want to raise that. There we go. Explores his lifelong struggle with depression through a lens of love and gratitude for the natural world. Jared created and voices the Crypto Naturalist podcast, a scripted audio fiction show about real adoration for imaginary wildlife. He has had an eclectic career, ranging from teaching college English courses after earning his MA in literature to managing marketing and events for academic and ecological nonprofits. He lives in Ohio between a park and a cemetery. Next to him is Felipe Franco Munoz, Felipe Munoz he goes by, who is a fiction writer, a poet, a playwright, and a translator from Brazil. He's the author of, I will read not the Portuguese, but the English translations of his titles: Dissolutions 2024, Lanterns to Nirvana 2022, Identities 2018, and Lies 2016. A translator of works by Turgenev, Marshak, and Pushkin, he's the recipient of a Santa Madalena Foundation Fellowship and residencies with Art Umi, Sangam House, and the festival Artes Vertentes. And he is in Iowa City as part of the 2024 IWP residency. Next to him is Yassin Adnan, a poet, fiction writer, editor, and television presenter from Morocco, who is also the author of 6 poetry collections, 3 short story collections, 1 novel, and 1 book about travel, and an anthology he just finished in Iowa City a couple of days ago. The novel Hot Maroc, which is very funny from the excerpts that we were able to read, was published in English by Syracuse University in the press in 2021. Adnan serves as the president of the Marrakesh English Book Festival and is a member of the board of trustees of the International Prize for Arabic Fiction. The founder of 2 literary magazines, he has also hosted 2 cultural television programs, a radio show, and a podcast. Adnan is also in the IWP residency of this fall. Next to him is Priya Hein, a fiction and non-fiction writer from Mauritius, who debuted in 2023 with the novel Riambel, which won the Prix Athénéa and was recognized as a notable African book for that year. The manuscript had previously won the Prix Jean Franchette in 2021, and she was nominated by the National Library of Mauritius for the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award and shortlisted for several other prizes and fellowships. In 2019, she was a mentee in the International Writing Program's Women's Creative Membership Project, and we're so thrilled that we were able to bring her back as part of the fall residency this year. And next to her Our closer is Marguerite Schaefer, who is a writer who came to us from New Orleans. She's a professor of practice at Tulane University, where she teaches courses in design thinking and speculative fiction as tools for social change. Formerly, she taught English at the East Oakland School of the Arts, at the Castlemont High School, Life Academy, and George Washington Carver High School. Her debut short story collection, The Man in the Banana Trees, was selected by Judge Jamil Jan Kochai for the Iowa Short Fiction Award from the University of Iowa Press and was published here in town this fall. Welcome. So maybe we'll proceed in the list, in the sequence in which we were listed. Jared, please.
So interesting thinking about place. One question that I thought was really intriguing in terms of the panel description was, could place within a creative work really be universal? And the way I approached that was the thought that I think what is universal and what can be universal is the human experience of connection to concrete elements within a space. And for me, one of the great pleasures of encountering other places and works of fiction and poetry is that feeling of resonance and that spark of shared humanity that I recognize that has very little to do with the concrete details of a place and everything to do with how we experience place. And so in my memoir, for example, it's very much about the rural towns in Ohio where I grew up in the woods. But I think what can resonate with folks who have no background in that place is simply the specificity and the way in which I approach that connection. So curious to hear how place functions in your works.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Natasha. I'd like to thank the Iowa City Book Festival and the International Writing Program, also the State Department and the American Embassy in Brazil. I'm very pleased to be here with you. In the first moment, when I was invited to speak about place and how I work in my literature with place, I was thinking about speaking a bit how stage directions work inside my literature, because I write in a mixture of, usually I write in a mixture of drama and poetry. So my books, they look like this, for instance, with some stage directions and some verses, some visual poetry, sometimes metrified poetry. And in those stage directions, that is the moment where I specify where this hypothetical play is happening. So, for instance, in this book, my most recent book, the first stage direction is São Paulo, 2020. So the reader immediately know where this place is happening. It's not exactly a play, but like a play to be staged only on page. So bedroom, a bookshelf extends across the width of the stage. Among the books, a large illuminated globe switched off. In front, a king-sized bed. And it goes on. Or in this short story, also São Paulo, 2023, living room of an apartment in Perdizes, which is a neighborhood in São Paulo. On the table, round in the center. So most of the fragments that I write that are inside my books, they happen in São Paulo. And most of them I start like this, and I situated what's happening. But then, so my first intention was to talk a bit about this. But then I realized that I'm writing, what I'm writing right now is a kind of written map of Iowa City. So maybe it's more interesting to talk about this new project, which I'm doing in collaboration with Nada Turki, who's right here in the first row. She's a Saudi Arabian writer, also in international writing program, and we decided in the very first week to try to write something together in English. And so what we are working on right now is the first page will look like this. We don't know exactly if it's going to be a booklet. Probably not. Probably we won't have enough material to have an actual book, but maybe a booklet, something shorter than a book. Who knows? Maybe an exhibition.
Novella.
Because it, or a novella, because it has a lot of the visual aspect that's very important. So the reader will have on their left this map, and on the right the place that is that. So the first page, the reader will have everything, all locations that we chose like randomly, arbitrarily in Iowa City. And then next page, just the location where the fragment is located on, and the fragment itself. So our idea is to guide the reader through this map, and the reader will catch a glimpse of something that is happening inside that locations. So the first one, and I'm not sure if I should read it right now or maybe later.
Now it's good.
Now it's good. So I'll read the very beginning of the. I don't want to talk too long, so I know we have limited time, and so I'll read the very beginning, which is happening in a house that we chose walking through the city. We chose it randomly, so probably real people live there. We don't know, but we created a character. And this house address is 27 North Johnson Street. Perhaps some of you know this street. And we created a character that's living there. And what will happen afterwards in this fragment is that the character, he's taking home a poster from the Iowa City Public Library, because we found it very interesting that we can do it here in the library, take artworks home.
Oh,
so yeah, and we did it in the first week. And the artwork I took to decorate my hotel room was American Gothic by Grant Wood. By chance, I didn't know actually that Grant Wood died here. Researching a bit about American Gothic and talking to Nada about it, we decided to write this first fragment about a character who would take this artwork home and is looking at American Gothic and thinking about his life. So this is the very beginning of our project and of this fragment as well. Grant Wood, who was born in rural Iowa near Anamosa in 1891 and died of pancreatic cancer at the University Hospital in Iowa City in 1942, painted in 1930 American Gothic, the Midwest, backdropped by a blue, though not translucent, blue smoky cloud, morning sky. There are some round, most of them green tree crowns. There's a red glimpse of a barn on the right. More, there's a larger house, a white frame house with a porch with a beef stick begonia and a mother-in-law stone with a board and batten siding with a Gothic window that in fact takes over at least the first side of the backdrop. This frame house is known as the Dibble House. Its address today is 300 American Gothic Street, Eldon, Iowa. The painting doesn't say, but it is a 504 square foot house. Grant Wood saw the house solely twice in his life. He sketched it firstly on the back of an envelope, on the next day in oil on paperboard. Afterwards, the painting was completed at Wood's studio in Cedar Rapids, where he also had a photograph of the house. Nan, Wood's sister, and Byron McKibbe, their dentist, are the models for the figures in front of the house. Woman, older man, daughter and father, Wood said so. Grown-up daughter on the left, father on the right. Farmers, not relaxed. Daughter is blonde. Her hair, parted in the middle, is tied. A discreet light-waved lock hangs beyond her right ear. Father, apart from a thin gray shadow outlining his head, is bald. Daughter's head is a slightly wrinkled pear, upside down. Is father's jaw dislocated to his left? Does it increase the uneasiness of the whole picture? Daughter has a tired and bored and gloomy and enduring expression. Father has a tired and obstinate and sad and severe expression. Daughter has pale lips. Daughter's lower lip has no affection for daughter's upper lip, and vice versa. Father has narrow lips. Father's lips are a melting seagull over and over a desert. Daughter's neck stands up, 3/4 Modigliani. Father's neck is gelatinous, regular size. Daughter's shoulders are fallen. Father's shoulders are still standing. Daughter wears a brown colonial print apron, a black dress, and a cameo brooch. Father wears a black suit jacket, blue denim bib overalls. There, on the fabric's bottom, the signature can be found, Grant Wood, 1930, in a white shirt with 3 triplets of green stripes showing off a gold collar button. Their clothing is outdated for 1930. Daughter's hands are off stage. What kind of tool could she be holding? Father's big right hand squeezes a hay fork as if the father's life depended on those 3 tines. Look at her. Daughter's blonde eyebrows are thin. Daughter has blue steady eyes, catatonic, gazing to her left, gazing towards nothing, their farm, her foreseeable irrelevant future, her uninteresting lifeless past. Look at him. Father's dark eyebrows are thick. Father has brown steady eyes, catatonic, staring straight into my own eyes.
Okay, well, got a lot of writing done, two of you clearly. So we'll be able to come back in conversation to exactly how that hits Iowa City. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you,
Yes,
Natasha. Okay, I will just say that I'm from a city called Marrakesh in Morocco, and I have written something like 5 books about the city, written and edited. I have also edited books. So the first book was titled Marrakesh Declared Secrets. I have co-written with a friend, Saad Sarhan, a Moroccan poet, and which was presented by the Spanish writer Juan Guitisolo, who used to live in Marrakesh. And then I added some other books about Marrakesh. Marrakesh, lieu évanescent, vanished places, a book that I have edited about the city, and Marrakesh Noir, a book that I have edited in French for Akashic Books editions here in New York. There is also Hot Maroc, my novel, which is translated to English, and you can find it here in Prairie Lights, a bookstore. And it's also about Marrakesh. So I have always been writing about my city. In a sense, I can't imagine myself writing in the sky. I always need to have my feet on earth, on my earth, in my city. And I think that if I want to write about my city, I am torn between 2 imaginations, or 2 imaginaries, I would say. 2 imaginaires. My personal imaginary, which is very individual, with which there is some unconscious things, in which there is my childhood, my relationship with my parents, my old house, my first house, and this personal, very personal, singular memory is so essential. But at the same time, you are talking about a city. There is another collective imaginary that you cannot get rid of. I mean, you just cannot say, I don't care about it. No, it's common. and especially a city like Marrakesh, which has history, there are a lot of things you cannot get rid of. And while writing, while working, you are torn between these two imaginations, and it's your job to negotiate with both of them to find out your way and to write your own city in your own way. And this is why, again, things depend on you. While writing, when I started writing about Marrakesh in the first book, which is Marrakech Secret Affiché, Marrakesh Declared Secrets, it was something like, though it's prose book, but there was some poetic vision, some poetic way of doing. And Marrakesh was, in a sense, some kind of a utopia. There is love of your city, and you just cannot get rid of that love, and you are making from it a utopia. But then, with time, with age, things have changed in a sense. I started writing with from a different perspective. It's no more poetic. There is satire, there is humor in what I write about the city. There is irony. I'm started feeling a bit furious with some things in my writings. And I felt that there is something changing in the relationship with the city. I mean, it is the same city, and it does not mean that I don't love it anymore. But working on it, not simply as a landscape, not simply like as a place, but in Hot Maroc it becomes a character. And then I just find myself dealing with my city as a character in my novel. And hence, a lot of things changed. In fact, it has to do with the literary vision more than anything else. And when I was asked by Akashic Books to participate in their series of original noir anthologies, and they asked me to do something about my city, to edit a book about my city, I just find it a wonderful opportunity to work on contradictions of the city, to work about the dark side of the city. And I was even being criticized by some colleagues in Morocco. They say, but come on, I mean, Marrakesh is a wonderful city, but just like all wonderful cities, she has contradictions and she has a dark side. And I need to work on that. In Hot Maroc, Marrakesh becomes a dystopia. So I felt that in my trip as a writer, dealing with that main character that I could not get rid of while writing, which is Marrakesh, I just had something like a journey from the utopia to dystopia. I prefer to stop here. Maybe
That's great, wonderful. We'll be able to get back to it. Please, Priya.
Yes, so thank you for being here, everyone. When I first saw the title of this panel discussion, the first thing I thought was the title of my book that's called Riambelle in French, Riambelle in English, which is actually the name of a fishing village in Mauritius. It's a very rural place, very southern, most southern part of the island. So I am from Mauritius. Tiny, tiny island lost in the middle of the Indian Ocean. I grew up very near to the sea. So my landscape is absolutely different from this here, just to give you some context. So Riambelle is this fishing village that really exists. And my second novel, which comes out next year with the same publisher in the UK, is called Tamarin in French. And again, that's the title. The title is a fishing village in Mauritius on the west coast this time. So for me, I was very interested in this particular panel because I thought about what these places meant to me. And growing up on an island, feeling extremely lonely because we had very few distractions, Back then, we didn't have a phone. TV was only available in the afternoons, one channel. Places like that do exist. And when I say we didn't have a phone until I was a teenager, and I don't mean mobile phone, I mean landline. Libraries were far. I was in a village, so I started writing to entertain myself as a form of escapism. So when I started writing, it was about... of course, I was reading a lot, as much as I could, but like I said, libraries were very far, expensive, and public libraries, if I would go, I would be allowed 3 books, and I'd be really excited. I'd read, and then halfway through the book, it has been torn, so I didn't know the ending. So, yeah. Anyway, just to say that I didn't feel, even though those books really, really... amused me, entertained me, and made me travel to places unknown to me, I didn't see myself in those books. I felt totally underrepresented. I couldn't see myself physically. I couldn't see the landscape that I was so used to, because all these books were coming from Europe. So I started writing. And then again, I started writing for my children when they were small. Fast forward a few years, I wrote my first novel that came out in the UK last year. And again, I just wanted to say how the landscape deeply influenced me. I feel that the sea, as fluid as it is, it grounds me too, which is a bit of a paradox, but that's how I really feel about water. And I feel that if I'm not near water, I don't feel well. And I was lucky enough to be on the panel earlier on this morning, the part 1, this is a part 2, with my fellow writers, Katerina, who's here, and there was Forrest Gander as well, Chris Oftel. Nurit also was there, and Parveen. Did I miss anyone? No. And it was really interesting to hear their perspective as well, because what intrigued me was what Katerina was saying, that she grew up in the city, and she feels comfortable there. And when she's in the forest, that's completely disorientating for her, right? I mean, she feels lost and she doesn't feel well. And Chris was saying the opposite, how when he grew up in the woods, and that's what defines him. And he's totally at ease. When he comes in the city, he's absolutely lost. And everything looks the same, and then he will only see references. Oh, that big oak tree. I have to go to that oak tree. So, and that made me think how the sea defines me. And even though I left Mauritius to study in the UK, and I've lived in many places, in France, in Luxembourg, in Germany for 20 years, and other places I can't remember. Belgium, yeah. So I've been lucky enough to be near water, and I feel that I need to go and see water in order to feel better. And this morning, I went to the river. Every day I go to the river because that's what makes me feel like a connection. I have that connection. And in my writing, it's the same thing. So, as I said, it takes place in Mauritius, but the trigger for this book was actually something that happened here. Yeah, I know. So, Black Lives Matter happened here. We all know the brutal murder of Floyd. I was sitting in Germany at the time. I was living there. And that shocked me. That shocked the world, what was happening. So, something that happened here that affected me in Germany, because I was a woman immigrant in Germany. So when I was there, I thought we were watching in horror and shock around the world what was happening. And I thought, okay, as a woman immigrant, maybe this is time to address certain things that I've let go over the years. I thought naively it was the time to talk about certain things, which was not very well received. And I was silenced. I was told I should be grateful. So that made me very angry. And I thought, well, if I'm not going to be able to speak about it, I will at least try and write about it. So I sat down and I wrote Rayon Belle. But I based the book in Mauritius on this beach that I know. It's my happy place. I've spent a lot of time there. Now, why did I base it there? it could have been anywhere, because it's about entitlement. It's about white supremacy. It's about the other side of the story, women being oppressed and silenced. So all this to say, location, a sense of place, and I totally agree with what Jared was just saying, that when we talk about, universal versus local, I've had the privilege of reading his book. I'm not there yet. It's absolutely amazing. And I was thinking as I was reading it, Jared is speaking about depression, anxiety, and the way he does it is talking about wildlife. Now, when I'm reading this, I could be sitting in Mauritius on my little beach. I could be sitting in Germany. I could be sitting here. What I am feeling is this connection. I am connecting with what you are going through and how you talk about winter, how you're battling with depression. And that is so powerful. So it doesn't matter where we are or what we're writing about. But I think the main thing, in my opinion, this is what we're here to discuss, make it personal. Because if it's really personal, if you can put your own experiences, your world, that will transcend and that will connect. I mean, I could read a very tiny passage of my text here, opening, the very beginning, which really says how the sea is a character, again, as Yasin was also saying. Morocco becomes a character, Marrakesh, sorry. The sea becomes, a character. It takes on a character of its own because it's omnipresent. In Mauritius, we hear the sea, we smell the sea. Our livelihoods depend on the sea. We depend on tourism, the fishermen, boat trips, So the character here is going to the sea to feel better, it's almost baptismal, because she feels this renewed sense of, she feels better, so she can wash away her anxiety. But at the same time, the sea becomes oppressive because she's stuck on that island and she feels, and like I said, it's based on Black Lives Matter when we heard the expression, "Mama, I can't breathe." So the sea becomes so oppressive, like the scarf that's sort of twisting around the island, and so much that it oppresses her and she can't breathe. So yeah, it has, like you were also talking about how it has different character, how it can be soothing, it can be, it becomes a person of its own, it's moody, it's like a person, yeah. I think I'll stop here, unless I have half a minute to read.
You have half a minute, certainly. We don't want to make sure we get, we have our
Yeah,
final panel.
that-
Read a couple of paragraphs and then we'll,
Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Oh,
But, yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Okay, I'll be very, very brief. Because I think that watch isn't correct,
Yeah.
right?
It's
So-
easier to imagine.
Yeah.
That's what the reading is for, right?
Okay, thank you. So, I've nurtured a special relationship with our Indian Ocean, cradled to sleep by its motion, wrapped in its vast blanket of blue. I am its creature. Its fluidity defines me. The sea pulses through my veins, throbbing, keeping me alive, keeping me sane. My skin is impregnated with its salty smell. Tiny grains of sand are permanently trapped beneath my toenails. I tried to remove them, but then I gave up. What's the point? Anyway, I like the idea that I'm carrying a little bit of the sea with me wherever I go. I've known the ocean all my life. Mama says I was practically born here on this beach. The sea is in me. I feel its deep currents running in my veins, pulsing and throbbing constantly. At night, I hear the waves murmuring, rocking me to sleep, the way a mother and a father ought to have. And when I finally drift off to sleep, its lulling wakes me up. There. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was really beautiful. Thank you for reading that.
Oh, thanks.
It's wonderful to go last because everyone has already raised such rich material for discussion. I think to start, one thing to know about me and my work is that I'm from a military family. in America, and I'm an Air Force brat specifically. So I moved around from when I was a child. I never lived in one place for more than 2 or 3 years, and then we would pack up again and move to the next spot. So whenever someone asks where I'm from, it's a really fraught question that is a whole story, and I don't have an easy answer. But I do think that that definitely shows up in my work, in my writing. And one thing I learned very early on as a child is that despite these bases being in the same region, they were all in the south of America, they all were so different. People had different slang, different traditions, different rumors, different fables. The air smelled different. The plants were different. The ground underneath your feet was different. And every time I had to learn an entirely new place. So I was also, like Jared, very provoked by the question of, is something universal? And I think my answer would be a hard no. But on the flip side, I also am a short story writer primarily, and I, in particular, write a lot of flash fiction. So I often don't have a lot of real estate, get it, to get across setting in the rich way I might if I was writing a novel. So one of my concerns as a writer, something I'm always thinking about, is how to marry those two ideas, that there is not a universal place, that setting is one of my best tools I have to be evocative and provocative, and to show what a character is noticing. I think an important thing about setting is that we're always, in my experience, if you're in first person or even if you're in third, you're always seeing it through a voice or a perspective. You can't put everything in. So how can the details you're including about setting or place work double duty to show what someone, what is haunting someone? What they've memorized or what is different to them, right? What they miss about how a place used to be. So I'm always thinking about how those details that I do choose to include when I have a 250 word count for a microfiction piece, how they can work double or triple duty. And I also write a lot of science fiction and fantasy. So that has the additional challenge of having to build a world from the ground up. Does gravity work the same way in this world? Is there magic? How many moons are there, et cetera. And I think I have learned a ton from watching science fiction and fantasy writers do this, of building a world really swiftly and elegantly and meaningfully, that I have taken not just into my speculative fiction, but also back into my more traditional capital L literary fiction. I think a lot of the same tools and tricks there work really well. One more thing I wanted to share. I live in New Orleans currently, which is a great literary city. It's been written about a ton. But also, I feel this heavy weight when I do write stories set in New Orleans, similar to some of what Yassine was saying, right? There's so many versions of New Orleans. You can never capture it accurately. And I'd be curious to see how others deal with this. But one thing I've done many times is write a fictional version of New Orleans with a different name, because I find that that gives me the freedom to say, I'm including all these details that are meaningful to me and important to me, but also I'm not constrained by reality. I can make up geography. I can make up places. I can bend the river to make it move the way I need it to for my story. So for me, that's been something I've done in many works, is to take a real place and research very carefully, go visit the place, get those senses, but also in the end, give it a whole different name so that I also feel that freedom as a writer to not have to get it right. Because even as much as I research, I don't want to feel like I'm a journalist. In that case, I'm still a fiction writer. I'm still trying to evoke and change things a little bit. And I have a little more to say, but I'll stop there so we can talk more.
Well, it couldn't have been, this arc could not have been wider. I mean, really, every permutation is different, so, which is great. And I'm just going to say the one observation that I had listening to you all is the relationship between somebody writing poetry and somebody writing prose. In other words, going from an interstate to an accurate description. Clearly that is the ultimate arc, all the way to, you know, as you said, building, world building, from inner mood to world building. And in a way, it's also the transition between poetry, which is very short, whose essence is compression, and all the way to realism, which is a completely different prose, which sort of is grounded in realism. Novels that don't have any location are very, very hard to think about as being interesting. They kind of tend to float away very, very quickly. So just how the assignment of place is really depends on the genre in which one operates, and then one kind of can pick out the core differently by in the different modalities. But I thought actually what I'd like to do is have you ask, as you were listening to each other, do you have questions for each other, or did you think, oh my God, how is that? How does that go? Or do you, or say more about this?
No, it's not questions.
Yeah.
I have just attended this morning's panel, and with this panel, I have the impression that we are talking. It's so broad. I mean, what we are talking about, and I have the impression that talking about your place in literature, we are talking about sometimes two different things, because there is. I have heard talking about the sea, talking about the woods, talking about nature, and that makes me think of a Canadian concept, which is la littérature du terroir. Terroir literature. Can I keep terroir for English?
Not
Does it
only,
work?
only if you're a vintner or a sommelier, only if you're a wine connoisseur.
Yeah,
that's where
but-
terroir. That's the only place where terroir is
No.
used in the American context.
Yeah, no.
So meaning of a
t-
very, very specific location.
Absolutely, that's it. So that's the idea, and they use it. Canadian people, I mean, but this we can talk about the terroir literature throughout the world. I mean, whenever you have that nature, and whenever you have that nostalgia for nature, for some wonderful, romantic, nostalgic, poetic word. But there is, again, another type of thinking of the city mainly, the city. It's that some people now, they say, I mean, they just consider, if you are urban in what you do, in what you write, that means that you are contemporary.
You're going to do what?
If you are urban,
Yes.
then you are contemporary.
Oh, contemporary, yeah.
Yeah, you belongs to the present, you belong to, and yeah, because again, when we talk about contemporary in the sense that you belong to a city which is a melting pot of cultures, maybe of aesthetics, maybe of ethnicities, maybe of languages again, because we can, and this is something we can find in the contemporary novel where you have different linguistic registers, different languages even. I'm thinking of music, media, film, advertising, old language,
The polyglot of languages. You know.
internet language, whatever. So it's as if we are between again two different ways of considering the landscape today in literature.
And temporality is so different because, as you say, contemporary in the city, and then you can. But the whole, I mean, one of the great pleasures of nature is that it has its time is measured differently, and
I'm curious too to hear what everyone thinks. One of the villains of my piece, it's a memoir, so. But one of the villains in terms of me talking about a struggle with my own depression is an overwhelming sense of placelessness. I mean, one way in which my mental illness manifests is in sort of acrid, acidic abstraction. The idea that I'm pushed off into questions about broad concepts like career and relationships and success. And all of these things in the context of depression end up leaving me feeling sort of bodiless and unanchored. And so part of the reason the book is about nature is about returning to concrete place. Because if I go out in the woods, I don't have an encounter with the concept of a squirrel. I have an encounter with a squirrel. And in that way, that was one way in which place specifically, concrete place, brought me back to a bit of a path toward mental health along with other factors in my own work. So I wonder how each of you, if you struggle at all with placelessness, when you're thinking about how you craft your own work.
I think that's very well put. And yes, I relate to that feeling of placelessness. I think in some of my early drafts of pieces, they sometimes, because they don't have a place, they feel like they're in like the Friends apartment on that TV show, like a generic New York, wealthy, white, you know, fake version of New York without any flavor, because I haven't put it anywhere else. And that's where my brain goes, is its default blank space. So I think that is something I have to keep in mind when I'm revising specifically. And I think it's very interesting that you mentioned a squirrel, because I have found adding animals into works of fiction actually adds like that real interruption into a character's mindset that does almost exactly that. I know you're speaking of nonfiction, but I found that for me, fiction, putting that in there helps. And I do think there's something about evoking a sense of place that makes the characters appropriately small. Like them and their thoughts are not the only thing at play. It's humbling for them, and it gives us a sense of the universe at large, which I think is very important.
That's great. I love the idea of inserting the animal, which provides a point of view and a sensorium of the place, but doesn't do it through language or through character. So that's really wonderful. Anyone else want to?
I mean, I can add to that very briefly. I also felt a bit lost when all this was happening. So I needed to find my place somewhere, and I found it by writing about the place that I love so much. And it was during COVID, as you may recall, so we couldn't travel. And I was missing home, so nostalgia played a big part. And being able to write about it, really, about the sea, for instance, again, anchored me. It made me feel really, it was soothing. So I understand what you're saying as well, that finding your place, or questioning your place in the world, really. And it brought me back to my roots, and just writing about that. Yeah,
I think COVID really had that. Was this enormous new gearbox that everybody was subject to, and we had to rethink all kinds of premises that we took for granted.
Yeah, and this nostalgia of not being able to travel back home, we'd go all the time, and missing it. And I think that comes across in the writing, because I was missing it so much that maybe I was able to portray that, I don't know, because people really think I was in Mauritius. I wrote it in Mauritius, but I actually didn't. So my senses must have sharpened. And I had a very similar conversation last year with Gitanjali Shri, who was in Mauritius for a book fair. And we were talking about writing from a distance, about home, or places that we, call home or used to. And she wrote her book, Tomb of Sand, in Germany, which is also funny because I also wrote my book in Germany. So, and she said, had she been in India, maybe it wouldn't have been that way. And I often think the same thing. Would I have been able to write the way I did had I been sitting in Mauritius? I actually don't think so.
The imaginary
Yeah.
was the toolkit. I want to open this to the audience. Perhaps the collaborator on the project that Iowa City suddenly brought forth. It was I was so completely surprised to hear this little turn of Grant Wood and talk about specificity and going down to the shadow under the eye of the angry older man. Yeah, but yeah. Is there a mic? Yeah. You got so absorbed. Right.
No, c'est pas bon.
I do have a question. First of all, thank you so much for all of your input on this panel. Something Yassine mentioned, the dark side of the city when you're writing about Marrakesh. As international writers, especially ones coming from, minority countries, people often know very little about these places, or even only visit as tourists, like you mentioned, Priya. So being here, even as in the international writing program, like we're seen as representatives for our culture. So I'm curious to know, like in your works, how do you approach showing the beauty of these places and cultures while also creating the commentary on the not so great or darker side of your homes, and where does that balance kind of lie for you? And also if you have any hesitations when you're highlighting the negative sides.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
That's a very good question, Nada. Yeah, so I write about the other side of the postcard. The picture, we sell our island to the tourists, the glossy brochures. So my text is also quite violent and graphic, and I've only concentrated on a very short paragraph now. But I think you know a bit more about my work. Even though in real life I tend to be introvert and shy, in my writing I do not shy away from the gruesome. I say it as it is. I don't care. As representatives, yes, I do also admit it is a beautiful place. Mark Twain described it as heaven, that Mauritius was created before heaven was, and heaven was created after Mauritius. All true, but there is a lot more to it. There's that dark side, and in my writing, you talked about balance, and I tried not to be only negative. I do talk about the dark side, admittedly, but I also have, I don't know how to call it, so it's in fragments, and they're interludes, maybe we could say. They're songs, poems in different languages. Even though I write in English, I have French in there, I have Creole, because even though we've been colonized so many times, so we have those influences. And I have recipes. And those recipes add softness, I think, or a literary pause littéraire, like we would say in French. So I try and balance it. I don't want to show only the negative side. It is stunning. If you haven't been and if you want to go to visit.
Yeah, thank you, Nada, for the question, which is so interesting. But again, I think that when you belong to a city, it does not, or to a country, it does not mean that you represent it. So, and the word of literature, diplomacy, is so different, totally different sometimes. So you are more concerned with the deepest things, with the human, with the literary things, rather than to serve someone, or to serve an ideology, or to serve a government, or whatever. But you serve your city, in fact. You serve your city that you love, in the sense that when I started thinking of Marrakesh, and I was talking about my first book that I have co-written with Saad Sarhan, Marrakesh Declared Secrets, that was a love story about Marrakesh. But then I discovered that I was reproducing a literary image of Marrakesh, which is not mine. At that time, I was reading everything written about my city avec fierté, with a lot of pride. So I read what Elias Canité has written, Prix Nobel, Nobel Prize, Les Voix de Marrakech, Marrakech Voices. I said, wow, Elias Canité has written something great about my city. Marrakech Médine of Claude Ollier, the friend of Nathalie Sarraute and one of the most eminent figures of Le Nouveau Roman in France. I say, Claude Ollier has written about Marrakech. And I was reading him. And I started reading Juan Guiti Solo, everything he writes. I knew Juan, we used to visit him and reading what he writes. And all these people were writing about the Medina, about the old city. They love that, with Jama' Fna Square, the famous magic place in Marrakech. And in my first book, I was, in a sense, reproducing their city. In a sense, I know the city because I was living, I spent my childhood in that same Medina. But while writing, I was reproducing their image. I was writing because I said, okay, these people, these international writers are making from my city something universal, which is great. And let me just rewrite that universal city. But at a moment of time, I said, no, I should write my own Marrakesh. That Marrakesh I could not read. I cannot find in their writings. So I just discovered that the city is multiple, with different Marrakeshes, and I was trying to write all these Marrakeshes. I won't. She's just telling me the time.
I'm not really. This is the only job that I really have. Right?
Yeah, no.
But I would not.
Yeah.
But no, you said, and in fact, Akashic Noir, the series, is really a wonderful series from the Akashic books, where each of the major world cities, the emphasis is the dark side.
Yeah,
the
but
underside.
we're talking about Marrakesh Noir and talking about all the series of Noir. I just want to add something. Even the new tourist today is no more the old tourist. You will give him a wonderful book about the city with photos, beautiful photos, and even that. These short stories can make him love the city and want to discover the city. So it can work as a touristic material. I mean, these noir books that we can write about this or that city.
I just remember something that Antonio Lobo Antunes, a great Portuguese author, mentioned once, that Vargas Llosa's Peru doesn't exist, Hemingway's Chicago doesn't exist. They're all... They're their own city, as Yassine was speaking, and I write within this imaginary theater that I created for my work. São Paulo is there, but it also doesn't exist, only in this imaginary stage. So of course I draw some real places and I place my characters inside some streets or museums or whatever, but they're not real as well. And also I'm still hoping to find a good, bright side anywhere.
Well, on this cheerful note, I think I understand that we have a 5:00 deadline here. So, thank you very much. This was really a hugely entertaining and very, very rich panel. So, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe you can find a bright side at the reception.
We're an hour in now, but 4 to 6 p.m. The ICBF is offering a reception at the Riverside Theater, right across the street, right next door to the Graduate Hotel.
Someone to
So
visit us.
please join us all for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.